Hello and welcome back to this series of videos introducing the Missed Opportunities for Vaccination application. I'm Caitlin Clary with Biostat Global Consulting. This is the second video in the series where we'll open up the application and take a look at how the tool summarizes missed opportunities by stratum and by dose. This is the landing page for the MOV application. The landing page provides some definitions of key terms that will be useful for interpreting the tables and figures in this application. We talked about these definitions in the first video in this series. The landing page also links to the WHO manual on vaccination coverage cluster surveys, and it provides a link to learn more about the vaccination coverage quality indicators software. This page is also where you can upload data of your own to explore in this tool. I'll demonstrate this upload process later in this video, but first let's take a look at the demo dataset that this application shows by default. We'll go ahead and navigate to the MOV Occurrence tab. Here we're taking a look at MOV outcomes in our imaginary country of Harmonia. The centerpiece of this tab is a figure that has a tile summarizing outcomes for each level 3 stratum and for each dose in our dataset. Each of these bars shows the proportion of kids who received this vaccine dose at the first eligible opportunity in blue, who had a missed opportunity that was later corrected, shown in yellow, and who had an uncorrected missed opportunity, shown in red. So for instance, in District 1 for the hepatitis B vaccine, about half of the children in this district got the dose at the first eligible opportunity, about 15% had a corrected MOV for this dose, and the remaining 35% or so had an uncorrected MOV. If we look in the same district at IPV outcomes, we see relatively few kids getting the vaccination at the first eligible opportunity, only about 10%. About a quarter of the kids had a corrected MOV, and around 2/3 of the kids had an uncorrected MOV for IPV. This graph lets us see those outcome categories for every dose and stratum combination in the dataset. We can use this to identify which doses have relatively many MOVs. For instance, we can see that there are a lot of MOVs for IPV, and we can also see if there are particular strata that have lots of MOVs. So for instance, District 1 and District 4 in this dataset look like they have a lot of uncorrected MOVs in particular. The red portions of these bars in Districts 1 and 4 are relatively large. The table on the right side of this graphic provides a stratum-level summary. This table shows for each stratum the percentage of kids who had no missed opportunities for any dose, the percentage who had some missed opportunities but all were eventually corrected, those who had some corrected and some uncorrected MOVs, and the kids who had at least one MOV, none of which was corrected by the time of the survey. So for instance, in District 4, 0% of the kids had no MOVs, 1% had some MOVs, all of which were corrected, 73% had a mix of corrected and uncorrected MOVs, and 26% had no MOVs corrected. By default, this summary table takes into account all the doses in the dataset, but we might be curious what the stratum-level summary would look like if we considered only a subset of the doses. For instance, since we know that we have a lot of missed opportunities for IPV, how much would these summary categories change if we dropped IPV from our calculation? We can use the dose selector dropdown to deselect IPV, and the stratum summary table will update to tally all the doses except for IPV. I can undo this by clicking IPV again in this menu. I can select and deselect as many doses as I want, so for instance I could take out the entire PCV series, and the table will update every time that I select or deselect a dose. You'll notice that this dose selector only affects the summary table. Deselecting those PCV doses didn't make these PCV columns disappear from the main portion of this figure. I can restore the default setting where all doses are considered by clicking Select All in this menu. The sample size toggle in this application will show the sample size in each tile. N for each tile is the number of kids in this stratum who had at least one health center visit where they were eligible to receive this dose. So in District 10, 243 kids had at least one visit where they were eligible to get the BCG vaccine. 202 kids in District 10 had at least one opportunity to receive OPV3. In some datasets, particular stratum and dose combinations will have low sample sizes. The result suppression slider under the graph displays tiles in a muted color when the sample size is under a particular threshold. By default, this threshold is an N of 25, but users can use this slider to adjust the cutoff between 0 and 100. In this Harmonia example dataset, the sample sizes in each tile are quite large. Even if I set a cutoff of 100, all the tiles will still display in full color. So I can't show you what the result suppression looks like in this example dataset, but we'll come back to this in just a minute when we upload a new dataset to look at. I'm going to go ahead and drag this slider back down, let's say to 50, and I'm going to turn sample size annotation off. If I scroll down in this tool, there's a table that summarizes the same outcomes as in the plot above. The table shows for each stratum and each dose the number of kids who were vaccinated at the first eligible opportunity, the first number in this cell, the number of kids who had a corrected MOV, and the number who had an uncorrected MOV. We can use this table if we want to talk with precision about a result in the figure. So for instance, if I notice that there are very few uncorrected MOVs for OPV1 in District 8, then I can use the table to see exactly how many uncorrected MOVs there were. Looking at the table, I can see that there were 3 uncorrected MOVs for OPV1 in this district. This table shows counts of kids in each category by default, but I can select percentages underneath the table to show the percentage of kids in each outcome category. So for instance, in District 9 for IPV, 11.5% of kids were vaccinated at the first eligible opportunity, 60.4% of kids had a corrected MOV, and 28% of kids had an uncorrected MOV. The summary column of this table shows the same information as the tabular portion of the graphic above. It shows a stratum-level summary of kids with no MOVs, MOVs that have all been corrected, a mix of corrected and uncorrected MOVs, and MOVs none of which have been corrected. When this table shows percentages, then these numbers in the summary column are exactly the same as the numbers that are displayed in the tabular portion of the output above. If I switch this toggle back to counts, I'll get the raw counts of children who fall into each category in this stratum. The dose selector in the interface that changes the tabular output here also affects the summary column of the table. If I deselect a few doses in the dose selector, then the summary column of the table updates accordingly. And this note above the table keeps track of which doses are taken into account in the summary column calculations. Users can download the data in this table as an Excel spreadsheet using the Download Table Data button, and they can download an image of the table with the Download Table Image button. And this graphical output above can be downloaded with the Download Plot button. Any of the options that are selected in the interface will be reflected in the downloads. Scrolling back up to the controls at the top of the application. In the first video in this series, we discussed the distinction between crude and valid MOV calculations. Those definitions are also on the Getting Started tab of this application. If the input dataset contains variables for both crude and valid MOV accounting, then this input will let users pick which set of results they want to display. In the example dataset, only data from valid calculations is available. The grouping level dropdown lets us select if we want to look at level 1, level 2, or level 3 strata in our dataset. Level 3 is selected by default, but if I wanted to see results for the country as a whole, I could select level 1, and the figure and the table will update. If we select level 2, then we'll see subnational results for the northern province and the southern province of Harmonia. Aggregating like this, we could see that there are more MOVs overall and more uncorrected MOVs in particular in the northern province compared to the southern province. Looking again at level 3 strata, here I have the option to filter by level 2. So in this dropdown, if I deselect south, I'll see only the health districts that are in the northern province, districts 1 through 5. Or if I select south and deselect north, then I'll see the health districts that are in the southern province. So with that overview of the controls in this application, let's move back over to the Getting Started tab and take a look at what happens when you upload a dataset of your own. If I click the Browse button, then I can select a dataset on my computer that I want to upload and explore using this tool. The tool currently works with datasets that are in Stata format, which is what the Wiki program produces, and there's a file size limit of 30 megabytes. A later video in this series will go over the specific variables that need to be in the dataset in order for this tool to work. If the uploaded dataset is not compatible with this tool, an error message will print, and if the dataset looks good to go, then this message will print to indicate that the dataset has passed preliminary checks. We can now go back to the MOV Occurrence tab to explore this new dataset. You'll see that the colors on a few of these bars in District D are faded, indicating that the sample size in these tiles is under 50, which was the threshold that I set in the result suppression slider. I can toggle sample size back on to see what the sample size is in those tiles. So indeed, in each of those tiles, the sample size is under 50. If I drag the slider all the way up to 100, then most of the tiles in this graphic are in that faded color, and if I drag the slider back down to the default of 25, then all the tiles are in full color again. When you upload your own data to this tool, you can use all the features of the application to explore MOVs by dose and by stratum, grouping at different levels, including and excluding different doses, and so on, and you can download figures and tables. In the next video in this series, we'll explore the other tab of this application, which characterizes the time it takes for MOVs to be corrected. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.